Get out. I don't want your damn food.
The elderly veteran's voice cracked through the sterile hallway, sending yet another nurse stepping back in defeat. But one visitor didn't leave. A 7-year-old girl stood trembling, holding a squished blueberry muffin, unaware she was about to unlock the final secret of a man worth hundreds of millions. What Lily didn't know was this. The angry old veteran dying alone in room 219 wasn't just bitter. He was testing her, testing everyone. And 6 months later, when 3 black SUVs with military plates rolled up to the care center, her quiet act of kindness would ignite a battle that exposed the true cost of compassion in a world obsessed with wealth. Welcome to Golden Heart Stories. This is the story of a child's kindness and the legacy it changed forever. The fluorescent lights of Maple Harbor Veterans Care Center hummed their endless mechanical drone, casting cold white across linoleum floors worn thin from decades of use. Anna Moore pushed her cleaning cart down the corridor, wheels squeaking in rhythm with tired footsteps. Her back ached from bending over bathtubs and scrubbing toilets, knees protesting every time she knelt to wipe baseboards. But she kept her face smooth and pleasant. When Administrator Davis passed with barely a glance, Anna smiled as though she had not been working 9 hours straight. As though her feet did not throb inside worn sneakers, as though she had not skipped lunch again to save money. The smile was armor, carefully maintained, never allowed to crack. Anna, make sure you get the 3rd-floor bathrooms before you leave today. Davis called over her shoulder without stopping. Yes, of course, Mrs. Davis, Anna replied, her voice soft and agreeable. Though her shoulders sagged at the thought of another hour, added to an already endless shift. She worked with methodical precision, moving room to room, with quiet efficiency of someone who had learned to be invisible. Her hands, red and rough from chemicals, wiped doorknobs and light switches. She emptied wastebaskets, changed linens, scrubbed away evidence of age and illness. The residents barely noticed her. To them, she was simply part of the building, as unremarkable as beige walls or plastic plants in the lobby. Anna preferred it that way. Being noticed meant questions, and questions led to complications she could not afford. In a converted storage room at the end of the maintenance hallway, 7-year-old Lily sat cross-legged on a folded blanket, surrounded by boxes of cleaning supplies and stacks of paper towels. The room smelled of disinfectant and cardboard. A single bulb overhead provided the only light, casting long shadows that made the cramped space feel smaller. Lily had spread her homework across a cardboard box serving as makeshift desk. Her pencil moved slowly, forming careful letters. She had learned the rules without being told twice. Stay quiet. Stay invisible. Do not leave this room unless Mama says so. Do not bother anyone. Do not draw attention. Do not make trouble. The rules were easy to follow because Lily understood what was at stake. She had seen the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen table at home. Envelopes with red warnings printed across them. She had watched her mother's face tighten with worry when the phone rang. She knew they were barely holding on, that this job was everything, that one mistake could send them tumbling into darkness Lily could only dimly imagine. So she sat quietly in her storage room, doing schoolwork by light of a single bulb, waiting for her mother's shift to end. Sometimes the silence became too heavy. Lily would stand and stretch, careful not to knock over towers of supplies, and press her ear to the door. She could hear distant sounds of the care center footsteps in hallway. Tinny voice of television, occasional call bell ringing. The sounds made her feel less alone, less forgotten. On this particular afternoon, as golden light slanted through the high narrow window and turned dust motes into drifting sparks, Lily heard something different. A cough, deep and rattling, followed by a voice that snapped like a breaking branch. Get out. I don't want your damn food. Take it away. A nurse's voice responded, tired and strained. Mr. Hayes, you need to eat something. You haven't touched your lunch. I said get out. I'm not hungry. And I don't need you hovering over me like I'm some kind of invalid. The voice was harsh, angry, full of bitter authority. It came from somewhere close, just beyond the hallway. Lily's curiosity stirred despite her mother's warnings. She cracked the door open, just an inch, and peered out. The hallway was empty except for a shaft of light spilling from a half-open door. Room 219. The number was printed in faded gold letters on a small plaque. Lily knew she should close her door and return to homework. She knew the rules, but the voice coughed again, and something in that sound, something lonely and desperate beneath the anger, pulled at her heart. Fine, starve yourself then. I don't have time for this. Footsteps hurried past, and Lily caught a glimpse of a nurse in blue scrubs, shaking her head. She stepped into the hallway, her small feet silent on linoleum, and moved toward that wedge of light. Like a moth drawn to flame, unable to resist. Knowing she was breaking every rule that kept them safe. Lily's heart hammered as she approached the half-open door of room 219. Her fingers gripped the doorframe, and she leaned forward just enough to peek inside. The room was dim, curtains drawn against afternoon sun, leaving only a blade of light cutting across the floor. The air smelled of old paper and something medicinal, sharp and clinical, that made her nose wrinkle. In the center sat a hospital bed cranked up to support a figure hunched beneath a thin blanket, shoulders curved inward as though bearing an invisible weight. Walter Hayes looked like a sculpture carved from anger and exhaustion. His face was all sharp angles and deep lines, weathered skin stretched tight over prominent cheekbones. White hair stuck up in wild tufts, uncombed and defiant. His eyes, pale blue and fierce, stared at nothing, seeing everything and finding all of it lacking. Those eyes held decades of disappointment, of battles fought and losses endured. His hands, gnarled and spotted with age, rested on the blanket, fingers curled into loose fists as though ready to fight off the next person who dared enter. Even in stillness, he radiated resistance. On the bedside table sat a meal tray, pristine and untouched. The food had grown cold hours ago. Baked chicken, pale and congealed. Mashed potatoes forming a stiff peak. Green beans in neat rows, faded to olive drab. A carton of milk with condensation sliding down its sides. Everything regulation, everything bland, everything rejected. Lily's eyes moved from the tray to the old man's face. She had never seen someone look so alone while surrounded by so many people. The other residents had visitors, smiling nurses, families with balloons and flowers. Mr. Hayes had a meal tray growing colder and a reputation that kept everyone away. What are you staring at? I asked you a question, girl. What are you doing lurking at my door like some kind of spy? Did that nurse send you? Did she think a kid would make me feel guilty enough to eat this slop? Well, it won't work. The voice cracked like a whip. Lily jumped, eyes wide. Walter's head had turned, pale blue eyes locked on her. His expression was fierce, territorial, the look of a cornered animal ready to bite. I'm sorry, mister, she whispered, barely audible. I didn't mean to bother you. I just heard you coughing and I thought maybe. You thought what? That you could fix me with your big, sad eyes? That you could make everything better by feeling sorry for the mean old man? Well, I don't need your pity, little girl. I don't need anything from anyone. Cat got your tongue now? Get out. Go on. Get out of here. I don't want visitors, I don't want gawkers, and I especially don't want children looking at me like I'm some zoo animal. This isn't a circus. Go back to wherever you came from and leave me in peace. Do you hear me? Get out now. Lily turned and ran. Her feet pounded against linoleum, breath coming in short gasps. She fled to her storage room, slipping inside and closing the door with shaking hands. She pressed her back against the wall and slid down until she sat on her blanket, hugging her knees. The tears came then, hot and silent, streaming down her cheeks. Her whole body trembled with the force of what had just happened, the shock of being seen, of being yelled at, of intruding where she clearly did not belong. But even as she cried, even as her heart raced, she could not shake the image burned into her mind. Not the anger in Walter Hayes's voice. Not the harsh words. What haunted her was something else. In that brief moment before he noticed her, before his face hardened into fury, she had seen his eyes. Really seen them. And beneath all that rage, beneath all that bitter armor, she had glimpsed something that made her chest ache. Loneliness. Pure, crushing, unbearable loneliness. The kind that came from being surrounded by people who had given up on you. The kind that wrapped itself around your bones and settled in deep, making a home in the hollow spaces where connection used to live. The kind that turned you hard and mean because soft and kind had proven too painful. Lily wiped her eyes and stared at the concrete wall. Her lunch bag sat in the corner. Inside was a blueberry muffin, slightly squashed but still good. Lily reached for it, holding it in both hands. It was small, humble, nothing special. But maybe that was exactly what someone like Mr. Hayes needed. And down that hallway, in room 219, Mr. Walter Hayes sat alone with cold food. He would not eat, wearing his anger like armor because he had forgotten how to wear anything else. The next afternoon arrived wrapped in golden light filtering through the high windows, but everything felt different to Lily. She sat in her storage room with schoolwork spread before her, but the words blurred. Her mind kept circling back to room 219, to Walter Hayes hunched in his bed, to the untouched meal tray. I shouldn't go back, she whispered to herself. Mama said to stay here. Mama said not to cause trouble. But she had also seen what lived beneath Walter's anger, and she could not forget it. Her hand moved to her lunch bag almost without thought. Inside, wrapped in a napkin, was the blueberry muffin her mother had packed. It was not much, but it was hers. Lily lifted it, feeling its weight. The decision formed slowly in her chest, not as a grand gesture but as something quiet and necessary. But he's so lonely, she murmured, clutching the muffin. What if he doesn't eat today? What if nobody cares? She knew the rules about staying in this room, about remaining invisible. But there was a difference between causing trouble and offering kindness, was there not? Just this once, Lily told herself, though she suspected it would not be just once. I'll be quick. Nobody will know. She stood and moved to the door, heart hammering. The hallway was empty, the afternoon shift occupied elsewhere. Lily slipped out like a shadow, the muffin cradled in both hands. Her feet made no sound as she moved toward room 219. The door stood slightly ajar, dim light spilling into the hallway. Lily paused, listening. She could hear faint breathing, slow and steady, the occasional rustle of sheets. She gathered courage and pushed the door open just enough to slip inside. The room still smelled of medicine and old paper. Walter Hayes sat in his bed exactly as before, face turned toward the window though curtains blocked any view. He had not noticed her yet, lost in whatever thoughts occupied a man who had decided the world held nothing more. Moving with careful silence, Lily crossed to the bedside table. The meal tray had been removed, leaving only a water pitcher and empty glass. She set the muffin down on a napkin, placing it where Walter would see it immediately. For you, Mr. Hayes, she breathed, so quietly the words barely existed. I hope you like blueberry. I know you didn't eat yesterday. Maybe this is better than what they bring you. My mama got it from the bakery on 5th Street. It's really good. I saved it for you instead of eating it myself because I thought you might be hungry and maybe you don't like the food here. She stood there a moment, wondering if this was foolish, if he would simply throw it away. But she had to try. Some impulse deeper than logic told her this mattered, that small acts of care could crack even the hardest armor. She turned to leave but could not resist one final glance. Walter had not moved, his profile sharp against dim light, all angles and weathered determination. Lily slipped out as silently as she had entered, pulling the door back. Her heart continued to race, not from fear now but from something that felt like hope. Back in her storage room, she pressed her ear against the door, listening. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Please, she whispered, please just try it. Please don't be alone anymore. Then she heard it bed springs squeaking, shuffling movement, a pause that lasted forever. She imagined Walter turning his head, seeing the muffin, his weathered hand reaching out. Who left this? What kind of fool leaves food for a mean old man? Probably poisoned. Probably some trick, she imagined him muttering in that harsh voice. But she also imagined him lifting it, examining it with suspicious eyes, catching the scent of blueberries and sugar, and maybe, just maybe, taking a bite because hunger eventually wore down even the stubbornest pride. The next morning, when the cleaning cart rolled past and Lily dared to peek inside during a moment when the door swung wide, she saw the empty napkin on the bedside table. The muffin was gone. He ate it, she breathed, a smile breaking across her face. He really ate it. Tomorrow I'll bring something else. An apple maybe, or crackers, whatever I have. Her chest filled with something warm and bright, a feeling she recognized as the beginning of connection, fragile and secret and entirely theirs. Mr. Walter Hayes had eaten her muffin, and that meant everything. 3 days had passed since the first muffin, and the ritual had taken root. Each afternoon, Lily would slip from her storage room with whatever small treasure she had saved from lunch. Each time, by morning, it would be gone. They had never spoken, but the empty napkins told a story of acceptance, of connection forming in silence. Today felt different. Today, when Lily pushed open the door and stepped inside with an apple clutched in her hands, Walter Hayes was awake. His pale blue eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling, his weathered face exhausted. The afternoon light caught the tremor in his hands where they rested on the blanket, fingers twitching with a subtle rhythm that spoke of age and weakness. Lily froze, breath catching. She had not expected to find him awake, had not prepared for being seen again. Her first instinct was to flee. But something kept her rooted. Perhaps it was the way his eyes remained on the ceiling, not acknowledging her though he must have heard the door. She took a careful step forward, then another. The apple felt heavy in her hands. She reached the bedside table and set it down gently. As she straightened, Walter's hand moved. It lifted from the blanket, trembling visibly, reaching toward the apple. Lily watched as his hand hovered. The tremor intensified as he tried to grasp it, fingers closing only to lose their grip. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath. "Damn useless hands." He tried again, jaw clenching, but his body betrayed him. "Come on," he whispered harshly. "It's just an apple." But he could not. The defeat in his expression cut through Lily like a blade. "Let me help," she whispered. Walter's eyes finally moved, shifting from the ceiling to her face. She saw the anger from their first encounter, the fierce pride. "I don't need help from a child," he muttered, but his voice lacked the bite it had carried before. It sounded hollow, defeated. "Go away. I don't need witnesses to my humiliation." "I know you don't need help," Lily said softly, reaching out slowly. "But maybe you could let me anyway. Just this once. Nobody else has to know. It can be our secret." "Secrets," Walter scoffed, but there was less resistance in his tone now. "What does a child know about secrets?" "I know lots of secrets," Lily replied quietly. "I know that you eat the food I bring when nobody's watching. I know that you're lonely even though you pretend you want to be alone. I know that your hands shake and it makes you angry because you used to be strong." Walter stared at her, something shifting in his weathered face. "Smart little thing, aren't you?" "My mama says I notice things," Lily admitted. "Please let me help. Just with the apple." Her small hand closed around the apple, and she lifted it gently. Walter's hand remained extended, trembling in the air. She placed the apple in his palm, then carefully wrapped her fingers around his, steadying the tremor, helping him guide the fruit to his mouth. He took a small bite, the sound crisp in the quiet room. His eyes closed. When he had eaten what he could manage, Lily took the apple back and set it on the table. Walter's hand slowly lowered to the blanket, tremor still present. He reached into his robe pocket with visible effort, fumbling with something inside. After a moment, he extracted a small object and held it out. It was an old military challenge coin, worn smooth with age. "What is this?" Lily asked, taking it carefully. "A trade," he muttered, pressing the coin into her palm. "Not charity. Never charity. You bring me food, I give you something back. That's how it works. That coin's from my unit. 40 years I carried it. Now it's yours. But it's important to you," Lily protested. "Exactly why it's a fair trade," Walter said, his voice growing firmer. "You give me something that matters. I do the same. That's respect. That's how people should treat each other." Lily looked down at the coin, feeling its weight, seeing the eagle embossed on one side. She closed her fingers around it, understanding that this mattered to him, that accepting it allowed him to keep his dignity intact. "Thank you, Mr. Hayes," she whispered. "I'll take good care of it." "See that you do," he replied, but his voice had softened. He turned his face away, but not before she caught the briefest softening in his expression, a crack in the armor he wore. She slipped the coin into her pocket and backed toward the door. As she left, she glanced back one final time and saw Walter's hand resting on the apple, his fingers still trembling but somehow less alone. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the hallways when Lily made her way toward room 219, crackers tucked in her pocket. She had grown comfortable with the routine over the past week, learned to time her visits when nurses were occupied elsewhere. Today, however, her timing failed. As she rounded the corner near Walter's room, she nearly collided with Nurse Harris. A stern woman with iron gray hair pulled back so tightly it stretched her face into permanent disapproval. "What are you doing here?" Nurse Harris demanded, voice sharp as broken glass. She stood with hands on her hips, blocking the hallway. "This is a resident area. You have no business being here." Lily's heart hammered against her ribs, face flushing hot. She opened her mouth but no words came, throat constricting with panic. The crackers in her pocket felt like evidence of a crime. I was just. Lily stammered, but Nurse Harris cut her off with a sharp gesture. "You were just what? Wandering where you don't belong. These residents need rest and privacy. Not children running around." Nurse Harris' voice rose, attracting other staff who paused to watch. "Where is your mother?" The question landed like a physical blow. Lily felt tears prick at her eyes, blurring her vision. She thought of her mother working somewhere in this building, scrubbing floors, doing everything to keep them afloat. She thought of the bills at home, the worry lines on her mother's face, the exhaustion that made her shoulders sag. "My mama is working," Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause trouble." "Trouble is exactly what you've caused," Nurse Harris replied coldly. She turned and marched down the hallway, shoes clicking against linoleum. Lily had no choice but to follow, legs feeling weak, dread pooling in her stomach. They found Anna in the second-floor bathroom, on her hands and knees scrubbing grout. Her mother looked up at the sound of footsteps, and Lily watched color drain from her face as she took in the scene. Nurse Harris looming over them with righteous anger. "Mrs. Moore, we need to discuss your daughter's behavior," Nurse Harris began, tone leaving no room for negotiation. She explained that Lily had been found wandering the resident halls, unsupervised, that it was completely unacceptable, that the girl could disturb residents or hurt herself, that the facility had strict policies about unauthorized persons in resident areas. Anna rose slowly to her feet, wiping her hands on her work pants, eyes wide with fear. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. It won't happen again. I'll make sure she stays in the storage room. I promise." "See that you do," Nurse Harris said sharply. "Because if there's another incident, we'll have to reconsider your employment. We can't have staff who can't manage their personal situations interfering with care." "Do I make myself clear?" "Yes, ma'am. Perfectly clear," Anna replied, voice small and defeated. Nurse Harris turned and walked away, footsteps echoing like a judge's gavel. Anna stood frozen, then slowly turned to Lily. The look on her mother's face broke something inside Lily's chest. It was not anger, though that would have been easier. It was fear, raw and desperate, the terror of someone standing on a cliff's edge. "Lily," Anna said quietly, kneeling to her eye level. Her hands trembled on Lily's shoulders. "You cannot go to that room anymore. Do you understand? I know you were trying to be kind, but we cannot risk this job. Without it, we have nothing. Do you understand?" Lily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She understood. The weight of their precarious existence pressed down on her shoulders, making it hard to breathe. "Promise me," Anna insisted, grip tightening. "Promise you'll stay in the storage room. Promise you won't go near Mr. Hayes again." "I promise, Mama," Lily whispered, though the words felt like betrayal. She reached into her pocket and felt the military coin Walter had given her. She thought of his trembling hands, his lonely eyes, his gruff voice hiding pain. She thought of the empty room waiting for a visitor who would never come. That evening, sitting on her blanket in the storage room, Lily clutched the challenge coin and stared at the closed door. Somewhere down the hallway, Walter Hayes sat alone, probably wondering why the small kindnesses had stopped, probably thinking he had finally driven away. The one person who cared enough to try. The thought made Lily's chest ache with a pain she was too young to name but old enough to feel. 2 days passed in a fog of guilt and longing. Lily sat in her storage room, pretending to do homework while her mind circled endlessly around room 219. She had kept her promise to her mother, stayed within the boundaries drawn by fear and necessity, but the weight of that promise pressed against her chest. Every moment of silence made her imagine Walter sitting alone, waiting for kindness that would never come. On the 3rd day, something inside Lily broke. It was not a dramatic shattering but a quiet fracture, the kind that happens when you realize some rules are worth breaking. I'll just look, she whispered to herself. Just make sure he's okay. That's not really breaking my promise, is it? She told herself many things to justify what she knew she should not do. The hallway was empty when Lily slipped from her storage room, moving with practiced silence. Her heart hammered, but her feet carried her forward anyway, drawn by a force stronger than fear. Room 219 stood ahead, its door slightly ajar, that thin wedge of light falling across the linoleum. She approached slowly and peered through the gap. Walter Hayes sat in his bed exactly as she remembered, face turned toward the window though the curtains remained drawn. But something was different today. Something in the set of his shoulders, in the way his hands lay perfectly still instead of trembling. There was a quality of waiting about him, as though he had been expecting someone. Lily pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The hinges made a faint sound, and Walter's head turned slowly toward her. His pale blue eyes widened slightly, and for a fraction of a second. His expression brightened with something like relief before he caught himself and let his features settle back into familiar gruff indifference. "You came back," he said, his voice rough and quiet, as though he had not used it much in recent days. "I thought maybe you'd forgotten about the mean old man in room 219. "I couldn't forget," Lily whispered, moving closer to his bedside. "I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes. They said I couldn't come anymore, but I had to see if you were okay. Have you been eating? Are they taking care of you?" Walter studied her face for a long moment, reading something in her expression that made his own features soften fractionally. "You got in trouble because of me. They threatened your mother's job, didn't they?" It was not a question. Lily nodded anyway, unable to speak past the lump forming in her throat. "I'm sorry for that," Walter said, and the words seemed to cost him something. "You shouldn't risk anything more for a stubborn old fool like me." "You're not a fool," Lily replied firmly. "You're lonely. That's different." Walter looked away, jaw working as though chewing on words he could not quite say. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. "When I'm gone," he began, then paused, testing the weight of those words. "And I will be gone soon, don't try to tell me different. There's a box. A green footlocker under this bed. It's marked with my name, has everything that matters. I want you to have it. Not the nurses, not the facility. You, Mr. Hayes, you're not going anywhere," Lily protested, voice breaking. "You can't talk like that." Walter shook his head slowly, a sad smile playing at his mouth. "We both know better, little one. My time's running short. I can feel it. But before I go, I needed you to know about the box. It's important. Everything I couldn't say, it's in there. Promise me you'll take it when the time comes. Promise me." "I promise," Lily breathed, tears spilling down her cheeks now, hot and unstoppable. Walter reached out with one trembling hand and touched her hair gently, just for a moment, a gesture so tender it seemed at odds with his rough exterior. Then his hand dropped back to the blanket, and he closed his eyes. "You should go now, before someone catches you," he murmured. "But thank you, Lily. Thank you for seeing me." Lily backed toward the door, vision blurred with tears, unable to tear her gaze away. As she reached the threshold, she glanced down and saw it beneath the bed frame. A green military footlocker, scarred and weathered, with the name Hayes stenciled across its surface in faded white letters. She committed the image to memory, then slipped into the hallway. The next morning, when Lily dared to look into room 219 during a moment when the door stood wide, the bed was empty. The sheets had been stripped away, the mattress bare. The bedside table stood clear. The room was silent and hollow, scrubbed clean of any evidence that Walter Hayes had ever existed within its walls. The morning after Walter's room fell silent arrived with deceptive normalcy. Lily sat in her storage room, staring at homework without seeing the words, her mind replaying the last conversation with Walter over and over. She kept hearing his voice telling her about the green footlocker, making her promise. She kept seeing the empty bed, the stripped mattress, the hollow space where he had been. Around 10 o'clock, the atmosphere in Maple Harbor Veterans Care Center shifted. Lily pressed her ear to the door and heard fragments of urgent whispers, footsteps moving with purpose, tension crackling through the air. Then she heard it clearly, a nurse's voice raised in surprise. 3 black SUVs just pulled up outside. Military plates. Lily's heart began to race. She cracked open her door and peered into the hallway. Staff members were gathering near windows, craning their necks to see outside. Administrator Davis strode past, her usual composure replaced by panic, heels clicking frantically. Unable to resist, Lily slipped from her storage room and followed at a distance, keeping to the shadows. She reached the lobby just in time to see the front doors swing open, admitting 3 men in dark suits moving with military precision, flanking a 4th man who commanded the space simply by entering it. The man in the center was tall and straight-backed despite his age, somewhere in his 60s. His hair was silver and cut short, his face weathered. He wore a dark suit that fit perfectly, and his bearing radiated authority so profound it made everyone in the lobby unconsciously straighten. This was someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. "I am retired Major General Colin Mercer," the man announced, his voice carrying through the suddenly silent lobby. "I am here regarding Walter Hayes. I need to speak with whoever found the girl in room 219. The words hit Lily like a physical blow. She froze behind a potted plant, breath catching. The girl in room 219. He was looking for her. Administrator Davis stepped forward, composure somewhat restored though her hands trembled. "General Mercer, I am not sure what you mean." "What girl?" "The child who visited Walter Hayes regularly," Mercer replied, his tone tolerating no evasion. "The one he wrote about in his journal. The one he left specific instructions about." "Where is she?" The lobby erupted into whispered conversations. Davis's face went pale, her eyes widening. Her gaze darted around the room. "Find Anna Moore," Davis said sharply to one of the nurses. "Bring her here immediately." Lily's stomach dropped. Before she could move, one of the suited men spotted her behind the plant. His eyes locked onto hers, and he gestured to General Mercer. Mercer turned, and his stern expression softened as he saw Lily. He took 2 steps toward her, moving with surprising gentleness, and knelt so his eyes were level with hers. "Are you the girl who brought food to Walter Hayes?" he asked quietly, his voice losing its commanding edge. "The one who showed him kindness?" Lily nodded, unable to speak past the fear constricting her throat. Tears began to well in her eyes. "Please don't be afraid," Mercer said, his weathered face creasing into what might have been a smile. "You are not in trouble, child. Quite the opposite. Walter left very specific instructions about you. We need to speak with you and your mother." Before Lily could answer, Anna appeared at the edge of the lobby, escorted by a nervous nurse. Her mother's face was drawn and pale, her work clothes still damp from cleaning, her eyes wide with terror. "Lily?" Anna called out, voice breaking. "What is happening?" "Mrs. Moore," General Mercer said, rising to his full height and turning to face Anna with courtesy. "Your daughter has done nothing wrong. On the contrary, she may have done something extraordinary. I need both of you to come with me. There are matters we must discuss regarding Walter Hayes and his final wishes." He gestured toward the front doors where the black SUVs waited, engines idling. The suited men formed a protective perimeter. Anna looked from the general to Lily, her expression a mixture of fear and confusion, unable to comprehend what was happening. Lily felt her mother's hand grasp hers, squeezing tight, and together they were escorted toward the waiting vehicles. Stepping into the morning sunlight and into a future neither could have imagined. The black SUV glided through Vancouver's downtown streets, tinted windows concealing the nervous passengers within. Lily sat pressed against her mother in the back seat, Anna's arm wrapped protectively around her shoulders, both silent as the city passed by. General Mercer sat across from them, his presence commanding even in the confined space. Though his expression had softened since leaving the care center, revealing something paternal beneath the military bearing. The vehicle pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a sleek office tower. And they were escorted through security into a private elevator that shot upward. When the doors opened, they emerged into a law office of understated elegance, all dark wood and leather. A receptionist ushered them into a large conference room where floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the harbor and snow-capped mountains beyond. General Mercer gestured for them to sit at the polished mahogany table, then took a seat across from them. For a moment, he simply studied them both, his weathered face thoughtful, as though deciding how to begin a conversation that would change everything they understood about their world. "I knew Walter Hayes for 42 years, he began quietly. We served together in logistics operations. After retirement, Walter built Hayes Global Transport from nothing. Within 15 years, it was worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Anna's sharp intake of breath was audible in the quiet room. Lily felt her mother's arm tighten around her shoulders, felt the tremor that ran through her body. Hundreds of millions. The words seemed impossible, utterly disconnected from the lonely old man in room 219 who could not even hold an apple without help. After his wife died 10 years ago, Walter withdrew from public life, Mercer continued. He explained that Walter's son Greg and granddaughter Vanessa tried to take control of the company, but Walter saw through them. They cared about his money, not about him. So 3 years ago, he moved into Maple Harbor under an assumed financial status. Hiding his wealth, wanting to see who would care for him when there was nothing to gain. But why? Anna whispered, finding her voice. Why would anyone do that to themselves? Mercer's voice carried sadness as he explained. Walter had been burned by greed too many times. His son visited exactly twice in 3 years, both times asking for money. His granddaughter never visited at all. The staff treated him professionally but nothing more, just another difficult old veteran. Until you came along, Lily. The general's gaze shifted to Lily, softening. Walter kept detailed journals. He wrote about a 7-year-old girl who brought him food, who helped steady his trembling hands, who saw past his anger. He wrote that you were the only person in 3 years who treated him like a human being worthy of care. Tears streamed down Lily's face as she listened, understanding for the first time. The magnitude of what had passed between her and Walter, how their small moments of connection had meant everything to someone who had so much wealth and yet possessed nothing that truly mattered. Mercer slid a document across the table. Walter left instructions. For you, Anna Moore, he has established a trust containing $500,000 and purchased a home in your name, free and clear. He wrote that any woman who raised a daughter with such compassion deserves security. Anna's hand flew to her mouth, a sob escaping as she stared at the document before her, unable to process what she was hearing. $500,000. A home. Security. The things she had worked herself to exhaustion for, the things that had seemed forever beyond reach. Suddenly placed before her by a man she had never even met. And for Lily, Mercer continued, Walter established a trust fund for her education and future. Additionally, she is to receive his military footlocker and its contents. His connection to his past, given to someone who understood what it meant to serve others. Mercer reached across the table and placed his hand over Lily's small one, his weathered fingers gentle. Walter died alone in his sleep 2 nights ago, but he died knowing there was still goodness in the world, he said quietly. You gave him that gift, Lily. You gave him peace. The room fell silent except for Anna's quiet weeping and the distant sound of traffic far below. Lily looked out at the harbor, at the mountains beyond, and thought of Walter Hayes sitting in his dim room. Choosing loneliness to test the world, finding in a child's simple kindness the answer he had been seeking. The peaceful atmosphere shattered when the door burst open. 2 figures strode in with aggressive confidence. The man was somewhere in his late 40s, tall and well-dressed. His features bore a resemblance to Walter Hayes, but where Walter's face had been weathered and softened by loneliness. This man's expression was all sharp angles and rage. Behind him came a woman in her mid-20s, her face a mask of entitled indignation. General Mercer rose slowly, his military bearing returning in full force, expression shifting from paternal warmth to cold authority. Greg, Vanessa, you were not invited to this meeting. Greg Hayes snapped back, his voice cutting. He gestured dismissively at Anna and Lily, demanding to know who they were and why they were discussing Walter Hayes's assets. Anna instinctively pulled Lily closer, her body tensing. Lily felt her mother's fear and her own chest tightened. These were the family members Walter had written about, the ones who visited twice in 3 years. Mercer's voice remained level but carried an edge of steel. These are Anna and Lily Moore. Walter left specific instructions regarding them in his will, which is legally binding. Vanessa's voice rose to a near shriek, claiming their grandfather was clearly not in his right mind, that living in a care center pretending to be poor while giving away his fortune was mental incompetence. She vowed to contest the will. Greg stepped forward, jabbing his finger toward Lily with contempt. This child manipulated a sick old man. Elder abuse, pure and simple. She preyed on his vulnerability and convinced him to sign away millions. The accusations hit Lily like physical blows. Her vision blurred with tears. She had brought Walter muffins. She had held his trembling hand. She had cared about him. And now she was being called a manipulator, an abuser. Mercer's hand slammed down on the conference table with a crack that silenced the room. Sit down, both of you, now. The command was absolute, honed by decades of military leadership. Greg and Vanessa froze, then slowly, reluctantly, took seats at the far end of the table. Mercer explained calmly that Walter Hayes was of completely sound mind when he made these arrangements. He had medical records showing regular cognitive assessments by independent physicians confirming mental competence. He had Walter's personal journals maintained over 3 years demonstrating clear, rational thought. He had notarized documentation witnessed by attorneys. From the leather folder, Mercer extracted a tablet and tapped the screen. He turned it to face Greg and Vanessa, and Walter Hayes's weathered face appeared, recorded 6 months earlier. Walter's voice emanated from the speakers, rough but clear. My name is Walter Hayes. I am 78 years old and of sound mind. I am recording this to ensure there can be no question about my intentions. My son Greg and granddaughter Vanessa have proven themselves interested only in my wealth. They have visited me twice in 3 years, both times to request money. Neither showed genuine concern for my health or life. In contrast, a child named Lily Moore has shown me more kindness in a few weeks than my own family has in decades. She asked for nothing and gave everything that mattered. For this reason, I leave her my trust. She understands what my family never did, that wealth means nothing without humanity. The video ended, and silence fell. Greg's face had gone pale, his jaw working. Vanessa stared at the blank screen, tears of rage streaming down her face. Mercer closed the tablet with deliberate precision. Walter knew exactly what he was doing. You can contest the will if you choose, but you will lose. And you will confirm publicly what Walter already knew, that you cared nothing for him as a person. Greg and Vanessa stood simultaneously and moved toward the door with stiff, mechanical movements. Neither looked at Lily or Anna. Neither spoke. The door closed with a soft click that felt more final than a slam. In the silence that followed, Lily found herself crying, not from fear now but from overwhelming emotion. Walter had known. He had understood. And he had chosen to give her not just his trust fund, but his validation, his acknowledgement that her small acts of kindness had meant everything. Mercer reached across the table and placed his hand over Lily's. You did nothing wrong, child. You loved someone who needed love. That is never wrong. Anna pulled Lily into her arms, and mother and daughter held each other while the city continued its business far below, indifferent to the drama. Where a child's compassion had been tested and vindicated by a dead man's final words. 6 months had passed since that day in the conference room, and the world had transformed in ways both tangible and profound. Lily and her mother now lived in a modest but comfortable house with a backyard where flowers bloomed, a place that smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. Anna no longer scrubbed floors at Maple Harbor. Instead, she had enrolled in nursing school, pursuing a career that would allow her to care for others with true dignity. But today was special. Today marked the grand opening of something that would ensure Walter Hayes's legacy lived on. The new wing of Maple Harbor Veterans Care Center gleamed in the afternoon sunlight, its fresh construction a proud addition to the older building. Above the entrance hung a bronze plaque that read the Hayes-Moore Friendship Wing, dedicated to the memory of Walter Hayes and the power of simple kindness. A crowd had gathered for the ceremony, staff and residents. Local officials and reporters, all assembled to witness something that had grown from the smallest seed of compassion. Lily stood near the front, wearing a new dress, her hand clutching the military challenge coin Walter had given her. She had carried it every day since his death. Anna stood beside her, one hand resting on Lily's shoulder, her face reflecting pride and disbelief at how their lives had changed. General Mercer approached the podium, his military bearing impressive, his expression softened with grandfatherly warmth. The crowd quieted as he began to speak. He told them about Walter Hayes, who chose to live simply to discover if kindness still existed in a world that values money and status. The answer, he said, came from a 7-year-old girl who brought muffins and held trembling hands, asking nothing in return. The new wing was dedicated to ensuring elderly veterans were seen as human beings worthy of friendship, with common areas. A library, activity rooms, and a volunteer program that would create the intergenerational connections Walter valued above all else. The crowd applauded, and Lily felt something swell in her chest, grief for what had been lost and joy for what had been created. "I would like to invite Anna Moore to say a few words," Mercer said. Anna hesitated, then took a deep breath and walked to the podium with quiet courage. "I am not good with speeches," Anna began, her voice shaky but growing stronger. "But I know what it means to be invisible, to work hard and still be overlooked, to feel like you do not matter. Walter Hayes could have lived in luxury, but instead he chose to experience what my daughter and I lived every day. When Lily showed him kindness, he did not just accept it. He honored it. He validated it. He said that compassion matters more than wealth, that being seen as a person is worth more than any amount of money. This wing will help others be seen the way Walter taught my daughter to see. That is the greatest gift." Tears streamed down Anna's face as she finished, and the applause was warm and genuine. She returned to Lily's side, and mother and daughter embraced. The ribbon was cut, and the crowd began filing into the new wing. Lily held back and found herself drawn to room 219 in the old building. The door was open, and she stepped inside, finding it transformed. It was no longer stark and institutional. Now it held comfortable furniture, warm lighting, and photographs on the walls showing veterans throughout history. Lily walked to the window where Walter had spent so many hours staring at drawn curtains. She pulled them open, letting light flood the space. "Thank you, Walter," Lily whispered to the empty space. "Thank you for seeing me." She placed her hand on the windowsill where she had once set a blueberry muffin. Completing a circle that had begun with simple kindness and ended with profound transformation. The challenge coin pressed against her palm, warm from her grip, a reminder that she carried Walter's legacy. Not just in trust funds and dedications, but in the lesson he had taught her. Some bonds transcended wealth and circumstance, built on nothing more than the recognition of shared humanity. Lily turned and walked out of room 219 for the last time, leaving it ready for the next person who would need it. Who would perhaps find there the same gift Walter had given her, the knowledge that they mattered, that they were seen, that simple acts of kindness could change everything. Sometimes the smallest kindness becomes the legacy that outlives us all. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences, your wisdom, your memories, they truly bring these stories to life. If you know someone who would find comfort or hope in this message, please consider sharing this video with them. And if you'd like to hear more stories about compassion, family, and second chances, we invite you to subscribe. Thank you for watching. This has been Golden Heart Stories.